Hello and welcome to another episode of Moonee Valley Voices, the new local podcast where we're talking to local people with amazing local stories. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Simone from the Silent Sight Foundation. The Silent Sight Foundation has a clear mission to help cure the blindness caused by the Usher Syndrome. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Stephen today about this incredible mission and how everyone in the Moonee Valley community can help achieve this goal. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much for having me, Matt.
That's all right. So Steve and I, we go a ways back. We played soccer together back in the day.
We did.
Two sort of local lads from the area. But we'll start local before we get into all the other stuff we're going to talk about today. But what are your memories of the Moonee Valley sort of growing up? Obviously, you went to school in the area.
Yeah, so I went to school in St. Peter's in East Keilor. I originally grew up in Greenvale, but went to primary school in East Keilor at St. Peter's since prep. Around the age of 10 is when we moved to East Keilor, in with my nonna, actually. So since the age of 10, we were living with my nonna and obviously my family. Went to high school at St. Bernard's and got involved with a lot of the local sporting clubs there. So played soccer with Essendon Royals sort of later on in my early 20s. But prior to that was at East Keilor Cricket Club, East Keilor Footy Club, and had some good memories throughout the days. And just for the record, my last ever game of cricket in under 16s East Keilor Cricket Club, 101 not out. And I never picked up the bat again after that.
Well, good to hear you were decent at one of the sports.
Yeah, I walked into that one, didn't I? But awesome memories. And even work-wise, down at Milliara Mall, I actually worked at Souvlaki Hut.
Oh, wow.
When that was a thing back in the day. So, I do speak a little bit of...
Who was the big footy player behind that?
It was Kudafidis and
right.
Ange Christou. So they were the gods of Souvlaki Hut back in the day.
Did they come into the store?
Yeah. So when they came to the store, it was a big deal. You knew about it. The local Greek community knew about it, and it was a big thing.
So what was your job there? Were you cutting up the meat, serving customers?
Because of my good looks, they put me front of house, of course. So
this was like a sit-down restaurant type. It wasn't just like a pick-up and
it was
go,
sort of like, look, it was like the Greek, it was the Greek version McDonald's basically for Souvlakis.
Yeah.
And look, I look back and with inflation and everything these days, I still say to my mates that, you know what? The platter for one, mixed meat, pita bread and dip and a drink, and a salad for $13.95. You can't beat that.
No,
back in the day, that was the bee's knees. And mate,
you can't get the salad for that much.
Exactly right. So had some really good memories at Souvlaki Hut, and even just from there, if you start talking about on the business side of things, getting to know some of the local businesses in and around there at Milliara Mall.
Yeah.
Obviously some of the businesses aren't there anymore. You look over the last couple of years, that used to be my local Blockbuster there.
Yeah.
Tony was the guy's name who used to own that one there, and so a lot's sort of changed, and I was living at home with my family up until I got married. I did the traditional Italian thing. I didn't leave the house unless I was dead or married, so I chose marriage.
Yeah.
Got married, moved out to Yarraville actually.
Yeah.
And we were there for about 8 years. Had the two boys, and we're now recently back in the hood in Essendon now. So,
perfect.
Come full circle.
That's it. And I know you worked a few other jobs around the area too. I remember you, when we were playing together, you'd work at Telstra and Airport West. And,
yes.
I know you've worked in local government, and you've worked, obviously you got the mortgage broking business as well. So bit of a variety of life there. What did you sort of learn from those more, I guess, retail jobs that you've taken into business and everything else?
I'm going to tell one quick story about Telstra.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'll put an explicit tag on this
done.
one. Yeah.
My first day at Telstra, I never forget, it was a Thursday afternoon. I rock up, store's packed. I go to the back. I walk in with all my clothes on and everything, so everyone's eyeballing me.
Yeah.
I walked right to the back. It's my first day. They let me in. I put my stuff down. They say, the manager at the time, he goes, just go out the front and just shadow Joanne for today. Just shadow her. You don't need to do anything today. Just shadow her. Okay, no worries. So I come out from the back. I walk past that same line of people that are just eyeballing me down, and they're getting frustrated. And Joanne is sitting down with the customer at a particular computer. I just walk up behind Joanne and I'm just standing there and I'm just shadowing Joanne, just seeing what she's doing with this customer. The whole store's just looking at me. And this one guy, he just flipped it. He just cracked it. And he turns around, he starts storming out. He walks past me and he goes to me, I'll never forget it. No wonder why this company is when it's got it's like you standing around doing all.
That was day one.
And Joanne turns around to me and she goes, "Welcome to Telstra." So that is my memory of Telstra.
But you know what?
West.
Like, I feel like I've been in Telstra stores, maybe even that specific one at Airport West, and I do see like sometimes there's a staff member, like just two staff members serving the one customer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell's going on? They need to put like a learner's badge on you or something.
Yeah,
right?
100%. It was a baptism by fire. But you know what? Even though there was even Souvlaki Hut, I like to think that, you know, all the jobs that I've done in the past, I sort of learned something from that.
Yeah.
Souvlaki Hut, obviously being very, very young at the time, and the wages back then obviously weren't the best. So my learning from Souvlaki Hut was the value of $1.
Yeah.
Was my learning there. My learning at Telstra was, you know, they were the premium product, premium service at the time, probably still are, and they were priced accordingly.
Yeah.
So my learning there, I'll never forget it, was this particular equation, which is value equals benefit over cost.
Yeah.
So even though it's a higher price, you know, there's the service and product behind it to back that up. And yeah, every sort of role I've sort of worked in throughout life, I try to get some learning in one way, shape or form, from whether it's someone that's been working at that particular place for quite a while or just, you know, from some experiences I've personally had in that particular company, in that particular role. So, yeah.
And the high school stuff, so Bernard's, we've had a couple of guests on from Bernard's.
Razza, yeah.
Razza. I was a Pegs boy myself, but give me the, you know, what was Bernard's like back in the day? What were your memories of the school and sort of, I know you're still mates with a lot of the guys you went to
Yeah,
school
so
with.
I'm fortunate enough that a lot of my mates I've actually known since primary school, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there's a group of about maybe 4 or 5 of us that are quite close. Obviously, with kids now, we don't catch up as often as we'd like, but I do consider myself very fortunate to have kept in touch with those group of guys since primary school and through to high school. Some of the big sort of memories and milestones at St. Bernard's, a lot of guys listening to this will probably relate to this one, was Year 9 survival camp at Santa Monica.
Yeah.
So that was 4 weeks where I like to think where we were once boys and then became men.
Because you'd go, but you'd come back for the weekends. Is that right? Am I remembering
Yeah, you
that
sort
right?
of do. That's, you know what? They probably should have just had us there for the full 4 weeks and like really toughed it out. But yeah, you did come back on the weekends.
Yeah, right.
But look, to go a week without like, you know, homemade sort of pasta and things like that. I mean,
for you, that would have been a fucking travesty, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's right. So, so Santa Monica was a great experience. And, you know, coming back to the sports side of things, our first 11 soccer team, I don't think had won anything for about, I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 10 to 15 years or something to that effect when we were there. Mm-hmm. And even our sort of age group as we were going through year 10, I sort of cost us the grand final. Free kick came in. It's just gone straight through my hands. We were 2-0 up. That made it 2-1, and then we lost 3-2.
Oh, no.
And then, anyway, so year 12, we made it to the finals, to the grand final. And, we were fortunate enough to break that duck. So that was a pretty good memory. And, like, you know, being an all-boys school and, you know, people sort of say, oh, you know, all boys, you know, how do you do it? Like not being co-ed and so forth. But, you know what, looking back and, you know, to be honest, particularly with the experience I've had with the foundation, there's a particular camaraderie and sort of, you know, brotherhood to a certain degree that you sort of get from that environment. And like I said, especially with sort of what I'm experiencing today with the charity, it's those sort of relationships that were built then, no matter how small they were, that today mean so much. So yeah, it was good times at St. Bernard's for sure, and hopefully, you know, my dad went there, I went there. Hopefully, my boys will go there too. So,
yeah, fantastic. We'll talk a little bit about the family. I know you met your wife quite young.
Yes.
So maybe talk to me about that. And
so she went to St. Columbus, obviously being, being St. Bernard's sister school. And so we've basically been together since we were 18.
Yeah.
She just used to live off Keeler Road. And within the space of like 6 months of, being official with her, she then moved to the other side of town, to Brighton East.
Yeah.
So, and back then, being on Savlaki hut wages, paying for petrol and
E-tag. Yeah.
So that relationship got quite expensive quite early, but we stuck through it, got married, and then the relationship became even more expensive later on. So
But
what
year did you get married?
2016.
2016. Okay.
Yeah, so we've been married 8 years now.
Well, there you go.
And as I was saying before, again, sort of very traditional families on both sides. So, never used to sort of stay over each other's houses or anything like that. But it's funny how quick things go. So I worked out the other day that she's probably been in my life for about half my life.
Yeah.
When I broke it down like that, I was like, wow, it's a long time.
Nah, it is. And you've obviously gone on to have two gorgeous kids together.
Yes.
And I guess that's the crux of what we're going to talk about today. Just talk to me a little bit about, the experience of becoming a dad first and foremost.
Yeah, so our journey to parenthood, some people might be able to relate to it, others may not, but, we were trying for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's long story short, basically to the point where we had to go down the IVF path. And it was a bit of a tricky time as well. So my father at the time, this was sort of during COVID, we found out that he was actually diagnosed with prostate cancer, quite a late stage as well. Mm-hmm. And so I had in the back of my mind as well thinking, oh God, is he not going to be around to, see his grandkids? Like my brother doesn't have any, I've got an older brother. Yeah. He doesn't have any kids himself. And, so we had that going on in the back of our mind, weren't getting pregnant, needed to go down the IVF path. We're going down the IVF path for a while, and that just wasn't happening. We're doing all the right things. And to be honest, we got to a point where we're like, you know what, let's just chill out. If we want to have a drink or whatever, have a drink, relax. And anyway, we're up at a holiday on the Gold Coast. She had just done another IVF round. And we got back from that holiday and found out we were pregnant. So with Francesco. So that was about maybe, I'm going to say a 2-year journey that we got pregnant. And with my dad, thankfully, so far everything ends up working out okay with his issues. And basically in November 2022, we welcomed into the world baby Francesco, who's named after my dad. So,
perfect.
Yeah, so that was the journey there. Now, again, like most parents that have sort of had kids recently, you're in the birthing suite or the room afterwards rather, and over that next sort of day or two, a whole heap of doctors and nurses come in, do a whole heap of tests. And the one test that that was conducted that got things sort of going here, unfortunately, with everything that's going on, was the newborn hearing screen test. Yep. And so basically they wait till the baby's completely asleep. They plug in some earplugs and electrodes and make some sounds and see if they get any readings. And they came in, did that test. They weren't getting a reading. Came in a day or two later, did the test again, weren't getting a reading. And at the time we were exhausted. You know what it's like having kids. We're exhausted, not thinking much of it. And they go, oh, look, he's probably got some fluid. He wasn't well rested, but we'll have to sort of, book a meeting with another specialist to do further tests and see what happens from there. So, so that moment there is we had like, I try to explain to people, we sort of, as we were trying to get pregnant, we had this low point of, it wasn't happening. Yeah. Got pregnant. We had this amazing joy. Yeah. And then we had like a space of like a week or so where, we were just like, enjoying our time with this newborn child. And then, when we went back to do those additional hearing tests is sort of where everything changed and sort of set us on the path that we're at today.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I remember when the twins were born, we were sort of in the hospital for a week. One of the girls spent the night in the NICU, and it's just a real complex moment because there's so much joy and there's so much to be happy about, but there are now, there's just a whole another person, people to worry about. In my case, I had the two. So, and I know the hearing test you're sort of talking about when you go back in, and it's they've got the headphones on, and even you standing next to them can hear the sound. So can you walk me through that sort of moment when that test is happening and like you can physically hear the noise that's coming?
So there were the tests in the actual hospital after the birth, the newborn hearing screen test.
Yep.
A week later, we went back to do another test back at the hospital, and they go, look, we're still not getting a reading. We're going to have to refer you to an audiologist, right? And the audiologist is going to determine whether or not there actually is an issue here in terms of deafness, or again, whether there's some like deeper underlying sort of fluid or something like that, right? But they'll validate that for sure. And I remember heading into that audiologist appointment, I'm a mortgage broker outside the foundation, and I'm pretty numbers based, and I was sort of just working the odds, right? And I asked the lady over the phone, well, what are the odds that at the audiologist appointment that something's going to happen here, that they're going to be deaf? And I think the number was 1 in 10,000 or something to that effect. So I'm like, right, it was 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000. I can't remember exactly, but whatever the number was, I remember thinking to myself, okay, those odds aren't bad, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, look, I'm a realistic type of person. I'm a pragmatic type of person. I go, let's be realistic about this. Let's prepare ourselves that, okay, there might be some bad news. But I had in my head, maybe, one of the ears had some hearing issues. Maybe there was mild deafness or something to that effect, right? Yeah. So going into that audiologist appointment, that's how I sort of mentally prepared myself, right? Steph, on the other hand, context is there's a newborn baby here, right? Yeah. So we're awake all hours of the night. Things are crazy.
And it's always 10 times harder for them. I don't care what anyone says. It's 10 times harder for them.
Exactly. So I think for Steph, it was a matter of just just trying to get through day by day, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the background, that's how I was sort of processing things. Get to the audiologist appointment, and like I said, this is one that's going to determine if there actually is an issue here. Baby has to be dead asleep for probably about an hour or two, because they're doing real thorough tests for this hour and a half, 2 hours. So Francesco, I'm holding Francesco, plugging him up with all the electrodes and all the sort of, earphones and whatnot. And then they're just doing different sounds at different volumes, different tones, different rhythms. And then, where I really started to get worried was I was holding him in my arms and he's dead asleep. And apologies if I get emotional at this point, which I am. So he's just completely asleep, so peaceful. And I can just start to hear the buzzing from the headphones in his ear. I could hear it. My wife could hear it. The audiologist could hear it. Audiologist is still doing her tests. And then she stops and she goes, so they test one ear at a time. And she goes, the reading that we're getting is consistent with profound hearing loss. And profound hearing loss, we go, what's that? And basically it's complete deafness. Yeah. And so we were sort of struggling. They test the other ear, validate the exact same thing. And so that, as you can imagine, was quite sort of traumatic for us at that moment. And I distinctly remember, like I said, he was asleep the whole time. And it was at the point where, we're putting him back in his pram. He woke up and he just started cracking it as all babies do, starts crying. And I'll never forget, I sort of said to Francesco, I go, trying to calm down. Oh, it's okay, Francesco, relax. And then I sort of said to myself, I go, why am I even talking to you? Yeah. Because you can't hear me. Yeah. And that's when the audiologist bumped in and she goes, no, don't say that. Don't think like that. Yeah. Because they, particularly when people are deaf or hard of hearing, they rely on things like facial expressions, body language cues, even your lips as well, to communicate. And that was a big moment for us. And yeah, again, coming back to that sort of roller coaster ride, you know, on a low with the IVF, high with the birth, and then we sort of had like this, real kick in the guts with this news.
Yeah. And, you know, so obviously that's very difficult news to hear, but what were the options that were sort of laid out for you? Because obviously there are sort of treatments that are available.
That's right. So thankfully, we were having the conversation with the audiologist, and that particular audiologist, following that meeting, I was so grateful we actually had her because her brother was actually deaf as well, and that's why she got into audiology.
Yeah.
And in fact, her brother was one of the early adopters of what's now the modern cochlear implant.
Yeah.
And so I'd known a bit about cochlear implants in the past as well. She had told us, you know, about her brother. He's in his late 20s now. He's able to converse. He's got a partner. He's doing architecture or something to that effect. And I remember sort of hearing that thinking, okay, well, there's at least sort of some hope here, right?
Yeah.
And then we sort of went down that path of, you know, what does getting the cochlear implants look like? And basically what that pathway looks like was, first things first, is getting an MRI to make sure that there's this nerve that basically goes from the ear to the brain that sends the audio waves or audio signals from the ear to the brain, making sure that nerve is there and that it's formed properly. Because at this point, we didn't know what the cause was of the deafness.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We just knew that he was deaf.
Yeah.
And we knew that we wanted to try and, rectify this as quickly as possible. So they tell us, okay, the next steps, you know, in order to get these cochlear implants is, to go get this MRI to see if this nerve is properly formed. And then, so same deal, you sort of have like this hope that, okay, if it's there, fantastic. If it's not, well, then what, right? And then you start to think about, you know, sign language and so forth. But we didn't want to think about, we tried to not think about anything like that unless it was the case.
Yeah.
Go to the MRI. So same deal, to do an MRI for a baby how old was he? I don't even think 8 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, right, very early.
12 weeks, right? So to do an MRI, the child needs to be completely asleep and they need to be sitting in the MRI machine, not moving. We went to our first MRI meeting. We could not get Francesco to sleep at all.
Yeah.
So that one didn't go ahead, came back for the second one, did the MRI, came out. A couple of days later, we get a phone call, and thankfully, we get the news that the nerve was properly formed, and that he would be eligible for the cochlear implants. To then go down the path of getting the cochlear implants, there's a whole heap of medical sign-off you need. He needed to go through having hearing aids first to make sure he definitely couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
He had to go back for another audiology appointment to make sure he definitely couldn't hear anything. Get all those sign-offs. And then we book in the surgery date. And the surgeon that helped us out with the cochlear implants, Dr. Clara Azali, absolutely incredible. She did the surgery for Francesco and Vincenzo. And that was another hard one as well. We sort of checked in or whatever. We're sitting there with Francesco, and then they come and say, "Well, it's time to, time to do this." And just sort of having to hand Francesco over to the team, and put sort of his health and well-being in someone else's hands is pretty hard to do. But at the back of your mind, it's like, okay, well, it's for the better. It's to help him. And again, thankfully, for God and for the expertise of Dr. Clara Azali, it was a flawless surgery. Then you have the road to recovery.
Yeah.
And then there was the...
So the surgery puts the implants in.
Correct.
And then there's a period of time where you wait before you actually turn them on.
Exactly right. Yeah. So implants go in, there's about maybe like a 2 or so week recovery after that.
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
Again, you got to think about it. The child's basically had a portion of their skull basically dug out, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the recovery is not too bad. It's not as bad as one thinks. But it is still a recovery period to get through. And then comes the switch on date for the implants. And, I think, some people may or may not have seen, other YouTube videos of, people having their cochlear implants switched on and discovering sound for the first time. And, all the audiologists and speech therapists there that are there for the switch on, they sort of temper your expectations and they say, well, look, that's not always
Typical,
the case.
yeah.
So that's not the typical case. It's, you could turn it on, the baby could actually just start crying.
Yeah.
You could turn it on, they could do nothing. And they say, well, look, if they do nothing, if they start crying, it may or may not mean that it is or isn't working. So you're still not too sure. So, yeah, same deal. Like, you go in, sort of hoping for the best in these circumstances. And, I'll never forget that moment. We had Steph was sitting down in the chair. Francesca was sitting in Steph's lap. I was, taking the video to hopefully capture what was going to be a very special moment.
Yeah.
And so he's got one of his cochlear implants on. And the lady's like, okay, we're going to start turning it on now. So she turns it on. And then Francesca's playing with this toy. And then all of a sudden, in a split second, you see like his eyes sort of notice something. His eyes notice something. And he looks up, he looks at Steph.
Yeah.
And that was...
It's a great video. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, same deal. I'm going to get very emotional throughout this podcast, mate. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that moment, man, I'll never forget it.
Yeah. Special moment to see the reaction almost instantly,
To experience that, to just see someone just experience a new sense in real time is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And for us, that was our turning point in our whole sort of pregnancy journey, parenthood journey, where we're like, despite all the stuff that's happened, we're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And we felt that was going to be the start of again back on that roller coaster, back up
on a high. Yeah. Okay, and then obviously with the deafness, before we move on.
Yeah.
So obviously the cochlear implant helps with the hearing side of things.
Yes.
But I'm sure there's other issues like balance and all that sort of stuff. Like
correct. Well, okay. So this is before we knew anything about Usher Syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. So remember, we knew he was deaf. We didn't know why.
Right, yep.
So we had done a whole heap of tests, was there sort of RSV or CMV during pregnancy that can cause deafness?
Yeah.
Were there any sort of heart conditions that could also cause deafness? So none of that. Then we did some genetic testing, right? We did some genetic testing, and there's thousands of genes, right?
Yeah.
But they only test for the main ones when they do the first round genetic testing. The main genetic mutations that cause deafness is what they first tested for. They tested for that.
Yeah.
And that was all negative, right? So at this point, we still didn't know why he was deaf, okay? Got the cochlear implants. We started to work on the speech therapy, and learning to listen is actually what it is. So the child needs to understand what sound is in order to then interpret that sound to then speak, right?
Yeah.
Is basically how speech therapy works, more or less.
Yeah.
So we'll focus on that, right? Now, as we'll focus on that, you as your child sort of grows older and starts to develop and progress, you sort of look out for certain milestones, right? Particularly with crawling and sitting and that sort of stuff. Now, we can say this easily in hindsight, but at the time, we sort of did notice that Francesco's head was a bit sort of floppy as you were sort of picking him up. As you tried to, as he was seated, he was never really seated. He could never sort of keep himself sort of seated and stable. If he was sitting in his high chair, he'd always flick his head back.
Yeah.
For example, so there were all these little odd things that were happening that we sort of couldn't quite explain. But again, at the time, we're so distracted with the speech therapy and everything we've gone through.
There's 1,000 things happening, right?
Yeah, 1,000 things happening. So we didn't think anything of it. But to answer your question, with relation to the Usher syndrome, it's the hearing from birth. his type of Usher syndrome impacts his balance from birth.
Yeah.
And then also, progressive vision loss starting from the age of 10 that ultimately leads to complete blindness. But at this point, we had no idea of that at all.
So maybe we should now talk a little bit about that discovery process and learning about this condition and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so basically, like I said, we got that first round genetic testing coming back where they said, look, tested the main mutations for deafness, can't find it. The next round genetic testing all these hundreds of other genes is going to take like another 4 or 5 months, right?
Yeah.
Steph and I already had enough trouble getting pregnant in the first place, where we sort of sat back and were like, well, look, we don't want to wait like another 2-3 years to have our second child, right? Maybe let's start trying again now.
Yeah.
But we tried again having known that, okay, well, it's likely, not likely, but it's probable that if we were to have another child, that other child might be deaf, right?
Okay.
And so we were happy to try for another child, happy to raise another deaf child if need be, right?
Yeah.
The mindset was, well, we've got to do it with Francesco, with baby number 2, we'll, if we have to do it. If
we have to,
we know what we're doing, we'll get through it, right? Anyway, as God will have it, first month of trying, Steph falls pregnant. And we find out the day before I'm going on on like a 2-month trip to America for my dad's 70th. With my brother is the day before that trip is when Steph and I found out. So I've got like this 20-hour flight. Contemplating all and processing all that. So we found out we got pregnant straight away, which we're very grateful for. Came back from the trip and so now in our minds we're like, all right, we've got to start thinking about baby number 2 here, right? Anyway, so, probably, 8 to 10 weeks in, maybe it was around 12 weeks. Let's say 12 weeks. Maybe 12 weeks in, we get a call from the geneticist, right? Says, Steve, we found we got the results of the genetic testing. We know why Francesco is deaf, right? And then I go, okay, what is it? And he goes, come down to the rooms and we'll have a chat about it. I go, look, I've got to let you know, we've also got Francesco, and we're pretty busy. Can you just tell us now? And he goes, no, look, our usual process is that, you sort of come down and we go over it. I'm like, all right, okay, whatever. Again, 1,000 things going on being a parent. And in hindsight, when a doctor tells you, no, you need to come down, you would think, oh, yeah, that's okay, something serious is going on here. Again, with everything that we had on, didn't think anything of it. So anyway, same deal. We're sitting in the waiting room for the geneticist. I hadn't really sort of processed much of this like I did with the hearing loss, with that 1 in 1,000 chance. This one here, I was just like, okay, well, just going to tell me, what. Like what the specific gene is, and that's it, and that's why he's deaf.
Quick meeting,
exactly, And we walk into the room. This geneticist actually had like an intern with him who was learning as well at the time. And anyway, so Steph and I are there, and the geneticist basically tells us that we've discovered the reason for Francesco's deafness. It's due to a mutation in a particular gene. And a mutation to that gene also results in the balance issues from birth and the vision loss starting from the age of 10 leading to complete blindness. And like to say that you're in a state of shock is an understatement. I remember at the time I didn't cry. I was almost like, what do you mean? Like vision loss, right? And he's basically like, he's going to go blind. And I just looked at Steph, and we just broke down at that point basically. And again, coming back to the roller coaster. We're now got this news. So Steph and I are consoling each other, and I look at the geneticist and I go, mate, we've got another child on the way. So like, what's the deal? How does this like? What's the deal here, right?
Yeah.
And so the genetics, then we get a whole lesson in genetics, basically, right? And so he tells us that, well, with this particular mutation, basically the way it works is both myself and Steph were both carriers of a gene.
Yeah.
And when both parents are carriers of a gene, basically it means there's only a 25% that your child will actually have the condition, right? That they'll actually have the condition. They'll be impacted by it. 75% chance they'll be completely okay, or they might just be a carrier at best, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately for Francesco, he was unfortunately that 25% in that equation.
Yeah.
And this is out of an equation for Usher Syndrome.
Yeah.
That is only like 400,000 to 500,000 people worldwide, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, all right, that's okay. Let's, like, again, as I was saying before, we my way of dealing with it was not to worry about something that wasn't an issue just yet.
Yeah.
So let's do what we need to do to find out what the go is, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So it was at about 20 weeks when you're able to do what's called an amniocentesis, which is basically where they basically put a syringe in your uterus to draw out some of the amniotic fluid, and they can actually do genetic testing on the pregnancy, right?
Right.
And so Steph went through that process at about 20, 21 weeks into the pregnancy. And so similar to, waiting for some of these phone calls to hear the good news or bad news.
Yeah.
We're waiting for this phone call and we think to ourselves, 25% chance that he'll have the issue, 75% chance that he'll be okay. We like our 75% odds.
Yeah.
I was at work this one morning. Steph was at home with Francesco. I think it was I that got the phone call from the geneticist. I dialed in Steph.
Yeah.
And the geneticist proceeds to tell us that unfortunately, Vincenzo, our second unborn child at the time, was also going to have the condition.
Yeah.
And again, I remember I left work. I went straight back home to Steph.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Steph wasn't crying. She was actually just cleaning. She was just cleaning the house.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, we were basically just completely numb with like everything that we'd sort of gone through and everything that sort of happened. And then that night, we started to talk about, as you can imagine, with the pregnancy for baby number 2, what path we were going to take there. And, for any parent that's listening to this or any parent out there, is a really, really shit thing to do, to have to talk about.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, there was one moment in that conversation where Francesco, he was sort of next to us. And I remember just looking at Francesco and thinking to myself that had we known this with Francesco, what path would have we taken at the time? And if we took a certain path, we would have never been able to meet Francesco.
Yeah.
And I think with, that for us obviously played a big part.
Yeah.
At that point, similar to the reason why we decided that we were going to try for a second baby and happy to raise a deaf child if need be, we basically thought to ourselves, well, okay, it is what it is, but if we're going to have to raise Francesco with this Usher syndrome condition, if you're going to do it for one, might as well do it for both.
Yeah.
And so, we decided for the to proceed with the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, mate, we're glad we did, because it was actually on Valentine's Day this year, 2024, when baby Vincenzo joined us.
Yeah.
And being born on Valentine's Day was actually being very close to being called Valentino, actually. We toyed with that idea, but yeah, mate, that was that's basically the whole sort of birth pregnancy journey. For those two boys, mate, and getting to that point was a wild ride. It's a lot of life lessons and a lot of moments to sort of reflect on what's important in life and with family, and a
massive roller coaster of emotions. That whole journey, and it's ongoing, obviously. But before we talk about the foundation specifically, just tell me about the boys. Like, what are they like? I know they've gone through so much already, and I know that there's still a bit of a battle ahead. But with the kids as they are today, what's the joy that they bring you? What are some of the things that make you laugh and that sort of thing?
Mate, well, look, I'm going to say, Vincenzo being the young kid, he's a bit of a bully to Francesco, right? So they've both got their cochlear implants now.
Yeah.
But Vincenzo, mate, I tell you, he'll just crawl up to Frankie and he'll just yank him off his ear. And I'm like,
it doesn't hurt when it gets taken off or anything?
Nah, because it's only like it's like a light magnet, basically.
Sure.
Like the external part, there's the internal part that's implanted, and like the external part's like a magnet that sort of attaches on. So it just sort of yanks it off. Well, mate, what are you doing? But no, they're doing really well. And particularly Francesco, so he's 2 now.
Yeah.
And, with this whole journey, so when we found out about the Usher Syndrome diagnosis, we then sort of, with the balance issues, engage a physiotherapist. We have physiotherapy every 2 weeks. With the hearing, speech therapist every 2 weeks for both boys.
Yeah.
So schedule for Steph is jam-packed, right? Yeah. And but what's been so very promising, particularly on the physiotherapy side. So we had my nonna's 96th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago. And it was the first time that Francesco, being 2 years old, was able to sort of run around the backyard with his cousins, his little cousins. And, being able to see him run around and just sort of hearing his laugh, just sort of seeing that, it was a very special moment.
Yeah.
Because, sort of like seeing those moments sort of makes you think, we're on the right path here.
Yeah.
He, on the speech side of things, on the hearing side of things, he understands everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
He's starting to, try to say certain words.
Yeah.
So he's just about getting there.
Yeah.
And same deal, it's those little moments. And same too with Vincenzo. So his cochlear implant surgery went well. Again, same deal, just seeing him learn a new sense or experience a new sense in real time is incredible. And look, as devastating as the condition is, again, like this is one of the ways that I'm sort of dealing with it, is in an odd way, it's a gift because we now have a gift that we... not that we're able to, but I think we appreciate those little milestones, so much more.
Yeah.
And to be able to get joy out of, with work and everything that goes on in life, you try to find those little moments of joy, and we get them in these really small moments that just mean so much more to us. Yeah. And so we see that as a bit of a blessing and a bit of an opportunity for us.
No, for sure. I mean, it's so easy to take for granted that vision of your kids running amok in a restaurant or a backyard, and for a lot of parents, after a while, that can become a bit like, here they go again, But it's a really nice, I guess, lesson and reminder that
100%
you got to just appreciate those moments.
100%, and I say to even just get up out of a chair, to stand up straight with the balance issues, to physically just stand up straight is hard enough, right? Yeah. To be able to converse with someone, to hear what someone's saying, to sort of, speak back, how you connect with someone, is usually through conversation, is very special. And then the other one is sometimes, when they don't have their cochlear implants on, right? And, so we're not officially or formally learning sign language. We're sort of doing a little, few bits and pieces here. One of the downsides is with the condition, it's okay, well, do we learn sign language when they're going to lose their eyesight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so we're continuing with that. But so saying to being able to connect with our kids when they don't have their cochlear implants on, when you can't connect with someone through speech and sound, you connect with them like your emotions come through a lot more in your body language and your facial expressions and everything else. So in a weird way, you almost connect with them on an even deeper level.
Yeah.
And so, even if anyone listens to this, even yourself, like try and like communicate with your kids without speaking to them. Right. And it's a completely different experience. And it's actually very special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very special.
Yeah. And obviously the eyesight, the vision aspect of Usher syndrome is particularly challenging. Obviously the cochlear implants help with the deafness. But on the vision side of things, and I'm guessing this is a big reason why Silent Sight has come to exist. It's almost this race against time to find some sort of cure, right? So talk to me about the foundation itself, what your mission is, and we'll get into it. But there's obviously been some incredible milestones already in what's been 4 months since since I first heard about it. Maybe, but
since we went live, it's been about like 2.5 months. So we're very proud of what we've achieved. But in terms of the Silent Sight journey and why we're doing what we're doing, back to your point around. So a couple of things. One, being a race against time. So the vision loss that is caused by Usher syndrome, in simple terms, it's basically tunnel vision, right?
Right.
And so before the age of 10, well, pretty early on, probably around maybe by the age of 5 or 6, the first thing that's going to start happening is they're going to lose their ability to see at night. So like when you're under dim light, walking around the house, you can usually find your way around. For them, unfortunately, it's going to be pitch black. So that's the first thing that's going to go. And then slowly, two things are going to happen. Their peripheral vision is literally going to close in on itself. So from the outside in, the field of vision is just going to effectively come down to a pinhead, basically, right? Yeah. With central vision, combined with loss of color as well.
Yeah.
So that's actually a best case scenario, that they actually retain some sort of central, albeit minute, central vision.
Yeah.
That's effectively the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that's completely gone as well, and the world is unfortunately just darkness at that point. So, again, in terms of dealing with it, we don't want to worry about that too much till it becomes a problem.
Yeah,
we want to enjoy the moments that we do have with them, and expose them to as much sort of visual elements and stimulation as possible, and to develop as much visual memory as possible. Right? Because that's another thing. For children that are unfortunately born blind, they don't have any visual memory.
Correct, yeah.
And so that's the thing. So we have this sort of race against time element, but then there's this element of, again, I'm a realistic person. I'm quite a pragmatic person. There's this element of realistic hope, right?
Yep.
In that, the good news is we at least do have this time frame of let's say for 10, 15 years. We aren't starting from an absolute sort of zero base.
Yep.
There are other families that have come before us that have done a lot of groundwork, both here in Australia and overseas. And we know that there are potential cures that are literally, as of right now, just sitting on the shelves at some pharmaceutical and medical companies, just effectively just collecting dust, right? Not because they don't want to proceed with them, but just due to lack of resourcing and lack of funding, right? In fact, one of the charity organisations that I'm partnering with overseas, his daughter is actually the poster child for that particular company, right? And so it was late 2023 when, I heard the news. So we're still pregnant with Vincenzo at the time.
Yeah.
It was late 2023 where, because I was following this other charity organisation and their work. Yeah. That's when we got the news that they had sort of put that potential treatment on the shelf. Yeah. And that's where I sort of turned around and said, okay, well, I'm going to have 2 kids that are going to have this condition. there's this foundational work that's already happened. There's stuff that's in flight sitting on a shelf at the moment, if not for, bridging some resourcing gap, could be a potential cure for my boys, right?
Yeah. Sorry, can I jump in here 1 second?
Yeah.
This treatment that's sitting on the shelf, so it's like they've tested it at some level, or it's a theory?
It's
or
a gene therapy.
Gene therapy,
Yeah,
right.
that's right,
okay.
gene therapy. So when you go through a lot of these sort of new sort of treatments, gene therapies and so forth, you obviously go through a clinical trial process, right? There's not to get too technical, you can sort of test these treatments on basically made up cells in a dish.
Sure. Yep.
You can test them on animals, whether that's like mice or chimps and so forth.
Yep.
And then it gets to a point where you then translate that to human trials, right?
Yep.
So this particular gene therapy is one that is has already gone through that sort of animal testing phase, more or less.
Yep.
But to get something to those human clinical trials is a huge step. It's a huge sort of funding hurdle to achieve. Because when you start to get actual people involved, you sort of need to set up a end-to-end sort of program to help those people after the trial and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying. So our sort of our term that we're sort of putting out there is the science is there, but the funding is not.
Yeah.
Right. And we're not even talking about over in America. We're talking about literally in our own backyard here in Melbourne. So in Melbourne, the Centre for Eye Research Australia and the gene therapy unit there, led up by one of our sort of research partners, Professor Lauren Aiden. They've got the facilities, they've got the people. We know how to do this sort of stuff. Yeah. But they just need the dedicated funding program to execute that work. And so when we found that one was being shelved, I was like, okay, and this is the other thing. Everyone sort of says, especially when we first found out about it, right? Everyone's default sort of message is, it's okay. You never know what they're going to come out with. Things are developing so quickly.
Yeah.
I listened to a few sort of podcasts and things like that, and I'll never there was this one sort of Elon Musk interview where he was talking about how humans went to the moon in the 60s and never went back, right? And they never went back because no one worked on it. And he said technology doesn't advance unless people work on it, and it takes a lot of people, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and money. Yeah. And so I heard that, and I'm like, we really can't sort of just sit back and hope that something's going to happen. Unfortunately, we have to make it happen. And I'm a true believer that, nothing great comes from people because they, want to do something. A lot of the time it comes, a lot of special things are born from a necessity to do something rather. Yeah. And so, that was some of my motivations. And like I said, the fact knowing that we have that window of opportunity to make it happen, we sort of looked back and like, that we really have to do something. At least try. Having this sort of sporting background, I guess sort of being a bloke, we always want to try and fix stuff. We always want to try and, play to win and so forth. You never want to say, hey, look, we want to try our best and not get the result that you don't want on the other end of it. But we are really going to try our best to make this happen. And we know it is viable. So outside of the gene therapy treatments that would effectively restore this type of vision, there are other treatments in the pipeline that may not necessarily cure the blindness, but may prolong it, right?
Delay it.
Correct. Sorry. Exactly. Delay the vision loss. Yeah. And so that's where it's okay, we've got that sort of 10-year timeline where they'll still have relatively good vision loss. Yeah. Maybe by then, hopefully one of those other treatments that comes out to delay the vision loss will come out. That buys us a bit more time to get those more permanent fixes. So again, we've got this realistic, pragmatic approach about it. I'm not one to sort of, spruik any sort of false hope or anything like that. Yeah. And if I truly believed that there wasn't something that we could achieve out of this, I wouldn't be spending my time and effort doing what we're doing. I'd probably just sort of spend that time and effort with my kids. Yeah. We truly do believe and know that there's a pathway to a solution here, and we just need that support to make it happen.
And it's bigger than just your two kids too. There's lots of people affected by this condition.
Correct.
Maybe give us some of the stats, because people might see this as being something quite like niche, but there are a lot, compared to other diseases that, and it's hard because you don't want to make it a us versus them and
Correct.
all this sort of stuff. I mean, that must just be, even for you when you're trying to communicate this sort of stuff, a real stumbling block.
And the thing is, like, okay, forget about any sort of medical conditions or anything like that. Everyone in their own lives has something going on, right? This just so happens to be our thing, yeah?
Yeah.
But in terms of, who else this affects, and the problem that we're trying to solve, not just for our boys, but for other kids, in Australia and worldwide. So worldwide, it's estimated about 400,000 to 500,000 people have some form of Usher syndrome.
Yeah.
And in Australia, it's estimated to be, let's just say, around 4,000 odd people.
Yeah.
Okay. And that prevalence is roughly the same, estimated to be the same as cystic fibrosis.
Yeah.
Right. And then, I remember when I heard that stat, when I saw that stat, I'm like, how can that be? You hear about cystic fibrosis everywhere,
time,
right?
yeah.
All the time. It's one of like the talk about the pregnancy journeys. It's actually one of the tests that they do during as you're preparing for pregnancy or already pregnant.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing that, like, what's going on here? And to your point around, like, not wanting to compare, like, one condition to another or anything like that. But, like, the one thing to that point is I sort of look at that stat and say, I look back in awe of the advocacy work that cystic fibrosis community has been able to do.
Yeah.
When you look at it from a numbers perspective, being relatively the same, that's the type of awareness and influence that we want to try and raise for Usher syndrome. So from like a purely sort of numbers standpoint, that's what that looks like. In terms of like a what we call, and I hate to say this term, right, as a cost to society.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we say cost to society, we mean, whatever welfare program that individual might need to go on later in life, or even early stage life, like NDIS, whatever funding needs to be allocated for that. Yeah. It means, where one parent needs to take time off work, that household has lost that income. Yeah. Or maybe that income's gone out of the economy altogether. Yeah. So for someone like myself, I run my own business. That's sort of obviously dialed down. So in terms of, and then there's your extended family that also has their sort of, work and social life impacted. So in terms of cost to society per person, over an individual's lifetime, it's estimated to be around $5 million roughly for someone with some sort of like form of blindness, right? Yeah. And so, again, you look at the numbers and it's like, okay, so are you telling me you could either, if society can fund 5 kids for their lifetime, right? Or bring those funds up front now, and then funds that cure for thousands of people, forever, basically. Right? And that's the thing, and that's what as what we're looking to do in 2025 with the foundation, is start to lean into that a little bit more at a government level. To say, hey, look, we've got what's almost an off-the-shelf sort of pathway to a cure for a condition that's costing society this much. That's something that if taken care of, is, and again, I hate to think about it like this, if taken care of means that our kids aren't going to be a burden to society, but they're going to be contributors to society. And I mean, that's, for the greater good outside of the Usher syndrome community, that's obviously, what we're hoping for.
So we'll talk a little bit about the results you've achieved. Like you said, the launch is maybe 10 weeks ago. What about, you've recently hit the $100,000 milestone before Christmas, which I know was a massive goal for you, like you had in mind. You've had, you've started on that advocacy piece. You've met the Wiggles. That's
the most important piece out of it all, right?
So you've been on a current affair, very importantly. I mean, again, we're in the same business networking group, and I was trying to explain to the group that we're in, to achieve that sort of level of exposure this early in the journey is remarkable. There are groups who campaign about lots of worthy causes,
Yeah.
right? And they don't get anywhere near that sort of exposure this early in the journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to the commitment that, you guys have shown in setting up the foundation and, in some ways not taking no for an answer and continuing to push for the coverage that you've got so far. And it's reflected, I think, in the goodwill you've generated around the foundation and the awareness you've generated around the condition as well. 'Cause, like you say, it's not something I'd ever heard of before the first time you mentioned it to me.
That's it. To be honest, even the GPs and paediatricians that we've engaged with at the Children's, no idea what it is.
Yeah.
Out of all the doctors I've dealt with, even for just little colds and flus that we're taking them to the doctor, they always ask anything else would he be worried about. We say Usher Syndrome. Only one knew about it because they did it as their research projects back when they were studying to be a doctor. It was a little niche thing. Yeah. So no one knows about it. And with the foundation and obviously all the work that we're doing, I'll say this. I know sort of people say, none of it will be possible without the people around us, but that is so true. Yeah. Right? Success, whether it's in business or these sort of charity organizations, only happen at scale. And you can only achieve that scale if you have that network of people and support around you. And my biggest learning from this entire experience is for any interaction that you have with anyone in life, no matter how big or small that interaction is, whether it's someone at the cafe or whatever, at the grocery store, whatever it might be, no matter how big or small those interactions are, do not take those for granted. You never know when something might happen that just having had that amicable interaction with that person, what might come from it. Yeah. And I use this example. There's one person that was able to facilitate a very, very generous donation for us. This person I went to high school with. And let me tell you, in high school, we probably, didn't have the closest of relationships, let's say. Yeah. I'm sure if you ask a few other people, but I'll never forget it. This guy called me and he's like, mate, I saw the story of your two kids. I want to see what we can do to help out. Yeah. And that basically sort of triggered a significant, sizable donation. And this was from, someone that I hadn't seen or spoken to in how old are we now? Maybe 15 years. Yeah. Hadn't seen or spoken with him. Yeah. And to have gone out of his way to facilitate something like that was really, really special. And in terms of what we wanted to achieve, our first goal was just obviously we put some of our own funding in to sort of get things up and running. Yeah. So the first goal was all right, let's at least try and sort of make back what sort of went into it. Yeah. And then our first sort of goal was $50,000. Yeah. We thought if we could do $50,000, an online only type of engagement. Yeah. Then fantastic. Obviously, with the help of a current affair, we sort of hit that 50 grand pretty quick. Yeah. And then we're like, okay, you know what? We've got to sort of gun for the 6 figures before Christmas. And we sort of had our minds, if we can be a 6-figure charity leading into 2025, then that sort of sets us up to have some of those, higher level conversations at different levels in government, different levels in the corporate world and so forth. So, absolutely wrapped that we've been able to hit that milestone. Like I said, it's something that's not possible with the people around us. Yeah. And again, I'm a simple numbers guy. There is, however many number of people in my network that it has resonated with. By extension of your network, there's so many people that it may resonate with and so on and so forth. Yeah. And I just look at it as a pure numbers thing and the possibilities are almost limitless.
Is there how's the money, what's the money going towards at this point? It's very early, I know. So is it going to research, advocacy? Or how's it
okay, so there are other Usher Syndrome organisations in Australia, Usher Kids Australia specifically, who do fantastic work. The founders of that are also parents of Usher Kids. And so on the research side, this is one of the unfortunate things, right? Okay, being considered a rare condition a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies and whatnot are cautious to invest a lot of money in what is effectively a small client pool, let's say, because that's effectively what it is.
It's a business, right? Yeah.
There's
only so many customers for this product. Right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the customers are patients that are going to be suffering from this vision loss, right?
Yeah.
So from a commercial standpoint, that's the challenge that we're facing on the commercial side, right? So that's where charities like Silent Sight Foundation, our job is to do sort of two things, right? One is to raise funds that can fund particular pieces of work that validates assumptions for these researchers that minimizes the risk, investment risk, for those larger pharmaceutical companies and pharmaceutical investment firms, right? So that's on like the actual sort of dollar raising side. And so putting those dollars back into those specific research items to minimize that risk.
Yeah.
The second thing is on the advocacy side with government and with the corporate world to create an environment that makes it beneficial for these large investment companies and pharmaceutical companies to develop and work on these types of initiatives, right? And so what that looks like is working with government, whether that is, via any particular grant program, whether that is between government and corporate, looking at, what sort of investment incentives are there, tax incentives are there to conduct research and development in Melbourne or Australia as a whole. Sort of lower those barriers to go from, start to finish with the particular treatment.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're looking to do. So we're purely focused on developing or funding the development and delivery of a cure. And we do that via those means. But the funds that we do raise is effectively allocated to research efforts or advocacy efforts that results in research. Yeah,
perfect. And you've mentioned a few times, but obviously local community has been super important.
Yeah.
I know the local Moonee Valley community, the surrounding communities and everything that you've been involved in. Is there like maybe, I know there was a cafe that helped you raise some funds.
West Street, mate. Okay, so this is the other thing. This is what I talk about. Anyone else who wants to get involved, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. West Street Cafe in Hadfields, we didn't even ask them. They just reached out and say, yep, we want to organise a particular day. Get the kids down, balloons, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They did that off their own back. $4,000 raised from that day.
Yeah.
Fantastic. A family member of ours is a teacher at this school in Sunbury, or Romsey rather, I think. And they did a couple $100, a couple of days ago with not doing anything.
Yeah.
We've got some Pilates studios doing a few things as well.
Yeah.
So I might have to sort of loosen up those hammies.
Up. Yeah.
I know. And this is stuff that like we haven't even initiated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying before. Like this is coming from people that, you don't have the, mate, you'll be so surprised like who comes out of the woodworks, right? To offer support in one way, shape or form. And that's just been so special to see. And then, now that we're back in the area, living in Essendon, I'd love to, get involved again in the local community. So if there are any sort of local businesses or anything that, think that there's some, sort of day or something they can do to help out and support, mate, we're all ears. Because that's the thing, a lot of this, I know there's a lot of this, you got to, advocate with government, advocate in the corporate world. But a lot of this stuff starts at the grassroots.
Yeah.
Right? And I've got a bit of a plan in my mind to have sort of like this groundswell of grassroots activity and that, sort of feeds into, what happens further up. And when the time comes, I'm going to need the Moonee Valley community to hit up the Honourable Minister Ben Carroll. So when that time comes, not we'll just line up a few ducks, but when that time comes, we'll definitely look to work with the community to make that happen. So
perfect. Well, we normally finish on a quick, Moonee Valley favourites. I know you've lived in the area, you've grown up in the area for a while. So, where's your favourite cup of coffee in the Moonee Valley?
Oh, favourite cup of coffee. Okay, Now remember, I have left the neighbourhood, but I'm back now.
Yeah.
You know what? Back in the day, though, you used to go to Mummalina's, which I believe you had,
I had
Sam on the other day.
Yeah.
Mummalina's used to be the place to go, and way back in the day was Vinny's Cafe, which isn't there anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Vinny's and Sam's Cafe on Killer Road. Actually, it used to be Sam's, used to be the old hangout.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, yeah. Let's say the only one that's left there now is Mummalina's. So,
Mummalina's, they're the survivor.
Exactly.
They've persevered. No, very good. Did you have a favourite local sports club?
Mate, it's got to be Royals, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be SM
Don't
Royals.
say that because I'm here. You can say anyone, but yeah.
No, I do. And yeah, look, I really envisage, my two boys, God willing, their eyesight sort of stays around long enough, or that we sort of, that's not an issue, that they can sort of play around with their mates and kick a ball around. So I'm really looking forward to that. But shout out to the East Keeler Essendon Royals and the East Keeler Footy and Cricket Club. So again, 101 not out.
Under 16s.
Under 16s, overland reserve. 2006.
You have to do the maths on that.
Yeah, 2006, 2007.
Very good.
I've still actually got the score sheet from that day framed.
Oh my God, of course you do. That's unbelievable. All right, so then you've got, so Mummalina's was the best cup of coffee. I was going to ask favourite restaurant. Mummalina's might qualify there, but are there any restaurants that stand out?
You know what? I do like Biagio's.
Yeah.
All right, down in Killer Road.
Yeah.
But again, look, I'm talking like Killer Road back in the days, right?
Yeah.
So I'm talking like, Frank Seafood, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking La Porchetta.
Yeah.
In fact, Steph and I were talking about like, where we're going to take the kids for dinner around here. Like there's the Essendon Hotel and all that. I'm going, you know what? Let's hit up La Porchetta.
Yeah.
Let's go old school.
Old school. Yeah.
So I'm thinking that. And in terms of, Noble Greek Tavern.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm going to be frequenting La Porchetta quite regularly. So if you're down there and you're seeing me and the boys and I and Steph, come and say hello.
Yeah, no, perfect. Well, Steve, man, thank you so much for coming on and again sharing this story. I don't know if it gets easier the more you talk about it or not, but you do a great job of telling it in a way that really resonates with anyone who's listening. So I really appreciate you, coming on and sharing this story. And I hope that whatever, it's not a current affair here, but hopefully this resonates with some people in a local way and we can generate a bit more support. So any restaurants, anyone, clubs, whatever, if you can run some sort of day that gives an opportunity to raise some much needed funds for this cause, I'd obviously encourage you to reach out to Stephen. Maybe just to wrap up, tell us if people want to go and make a donation, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. So head to silentsight.org. You'll see the donate now button right there. Just click on that, follow the prompts. If there's any sizable donations, however, feel free to reach out to myself directly via the contact section there. And we can facilitate a direct transaction rather than through the platform. So, any help, love and support. And I really do mean this in any way, shape or form. It can honestly be something as simple as sharing our sort of social media posts. If you want pamphlets to store in your shop front or whatever, we've got thousands that we can print off. Quick sort of one-pager around, what the foundation's about, what Usher Syndrome's about and what we're doing. More than happy to have that sort of stuff in the shop fronts in and around the Moonee Valley community. So,
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll get a couple of pamphlets here in the studio and we'll make sure every guest leaves with one. So, all right. Well, Steve, thank you very much again for joining us this week. That wraps up another episode of the Moonee Valley Voices podcast. As always, we're interested in talking to anyone with a local business. Maybe you're a part of a local sports club, or maybe you've got a great charitable cause you're trying to raise some money for. If that sounds like you can reach out to me, matt@contenthype.com.au. We'd love to get you on the show. And a big thank you to everyone who's listened to the pod in 2024. It's been a good start. We've done about 11 episodes now. So thanks again for tuning in. And we'll see you in the new year.